Welcome back to part two of my birth story with my beautiful babies. Part one, I ended off about part one, sorry. Part one, I ended off at um, preparing myself and doing somatic practices to heal birth trauma and strengthen my connection to my body and my birth and my baby and the trust that I needed to have for my body and for birth. So I ended off the previous episode with me wanting to birth my grandmother's house. Oh, I did that exactly. I mentioned about visualizing how I wanted my birth to go. I was visualizing I would close my eyes before I go to sleep and just sit there and visualize like how my water is going to break, where I was going to be, how I was going to feel, what like, the sequence following after all these things that I was visualizing and really being in that moment. So when my contractions started happening, which I never knew that they were contractions because I never experienced physiological contractions for birth. The only contractions that I ever experienced were Pitocin-induced contractions. So the contractions started off early in the morning and then they like gradually started to increase. And I messaged my friend, Alexandra, who was my birth support during my second birth. And I said, hey, like, I'm feeling some sensations going on in my womb. I'm not sure if I'm in labor, like what's going on. So she told me to keep her posted of what was happening and the frequency and length of these contractions that I was experiencing. I'm so grateful that I was in the pool that whole day because it was so flipping hot that day. It was so hot, and we had a blow up pool in my in-laws' backyard. So I was able to just, be in the pool and like feel these contractions, but like have the comfort of the water around me. So the whole day, I was just doing what I always did, played with my eldest son, Liam. He was 5 at the time. No, he was 4 at the time, almost 5. Um, Played with him, cooked dinner, did everything, like started getting ready for bed, and then the contractions started to get more intense, like intense where I had to actually be present with what was going on in my body and like just breathe and let them flow through. And I remember like my husband coming home. It must have been like maybe 8:30, 9 o'clock, maybe around there. I can't, yeah, around that time. And I said to him, I'm like, dude, like I'm in labor. Like we need to go to my grandmother's house and everything just lined up so perfectly, like the birth pool being there. Um, my dad, because my dad was living in the basement at the time, him like leaving to go and stay. I think he stayed at a hotel that night because I messaged him like, Dad, like, sorry to disrupt you and kick you out of your space, but I'm gonna need that basement. I'm gonna need that basement, Daddy. It's like I'm going into labor. Like, please, like, vacate. Thank you so much. Love you so much, but you gotta go. Yeah, so we got my bag, got the stuff, um, got Liam in the car, and we drove to my grandmother's house. And thank God it was like a 7-minute drive. Like she lives so close to my in-laws' house, which was so perfect. Yeah, we drove and my husband hit a pothole and my water just broke in the front seat of our car. The seat was soaked. It was freaking soaked. We did have a towel there because I was already leaking some fluids, but my water like full blown like broke and I'm like, "Oh my God, my water just broke, babe. Like we need to go." So I finally get there. Um my husband sets up the birth pool, like, oh my God, I love him so much. Like, he set up the whole birth pool, got everything ready. What else did he do? I'm pretty sure he set up like all the little like fake candles that I bought. Yeah, so he was like he was on the ball, man. Like he was on the ball. I would have to like constantly go up the stairs. So I'd come downstairs, see what was going on, but then I would like rush back upstairs because I could feel the contraction starting to build and build and build. And I had to like stay in my room. I was in my bedroom where I grew up in as a teenager, and I was just there and I was like moving my body and breathing and moving. And, on my way to my grandmother's house, I messaged Alexandra and I was like, girl, you need to get your butt down here. Like, I'm in labor. My water just broke. Um, the mucus plug came out. Like, you need to get here. And she lived, I want to say, an hour and a bit from my grandmother's house, but I had to have her. I had to have her there. She was like, I had to have her. She was a part of my plan of having her in the space with me to birth. And it worked out so perfectly because by the time she got there, like literally Damien was born maybe 30 minutes after she arrived. Like he was waiting for her to come. So it worked out so perfectly. But I remember like being in early labor to like shifting into transitional labor, and like it came quick. Like as soon as Alex came down those stairs, like I was on my hands and knees in my car on the carpet at my grandmother's house, and like I was in transitional labor. And my husband's like, "Come on, let's like get to the birth pool. Like, we'll help you get there." But there was no way I could get up. Like, I was so deep in the throes of this transition into active labor that I couldn't even get up. And I kept on thinking, "Oh my God, I hope I don't give birth on my grandmother's carpet. She is going to shit herself. She is going to literally shit herself because she is the type of person who is like OCD clean, like no dust, no dirt. If there was like I remember growing up with her and like Fridays were always cleaning day, and if there was like one little speck of crumb or dirt, anything in the house or on the floor, like we had to clean the entire house. We had to clean everything because she was just not like she does not like dirt or dust, which I can understand because now when I have my own home, I don't like dirt or dust either, and it's so it pushes me past my edges because, I have 3 kids and a husband, and, we live in here and we make mess and things get dirty, and having kids comes with, like, all kinds of mess. Anyway, I understand where she comes from. Long story short. So, my husband and Alex had to literally lift me and bring me to the birth pool because I couldn't walk over there. There's absolutely no way I was walking over there. I got in the birth pool on my knees, leaning over the edge of the birth pool, and I had my husband over on the other side of the room. My grandmother was like freaking out because this was her first time seeing physiological birth. Like she had no idea. So she was terrified, so terrified. But I'm going to share something with you after this about her. She was terrified. My husband was on the other side of the room. Alex was, in the space around me. And Liam was there. Liam was the most beautiful birth support I have ever had in my entire life. He was in my ear whispering, "You can do this, Mom. You can do this. I know you can do this. I believe in you. I'm so proud of you." He was saying all these beautiful things. And he was there. He was right in the action of birth. Like he witnessed the entire birth. And the purpose of me wanting to have him in the birth and experience birth is because I want to normalize physiological birth for him. I want him to see what birth really is and what it's actually like. I wanted to give him that experience that he can, take with him for the rest of his life. And, when he eventually has a partner, has a wife, and she gives birth and goes into labor and gives birth, like he's going to remember like how safe, physiological, undisturbed birth is. Yeah, so he was the key to my birth experience, and my second birth was like having him there. He witnessed his brother being born. He watched Damien, plop out of my vagina into the birth pool. Like he was there the whole time. And it was amazing. I remember like being in active labor and it was so painful. Like I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Like birth is painful. It is absolutely painful. It is not an easy thing to do. And I remember saying, I can't do this. I can't do this anymore. Like I cannot do this. And literally within like 2 pushes, Damien came. He came. And it was amazing. So amazing. I sat there maybe for 45 minutes. We cut the cord. And yeah, I walked up the stairs to my bedroom and got up on my bed and I rested. It was amazing. It was so amazing. And it was such a healing birth from the experience that I had with Liam. It was such a healing experience and it was exactly what I needed. That was my there's a word that I used in the previous podcast. That was like not my redemption birth, but that was like my like not comeback birth, but it was like, what's the word that I want to use? My reclamation birth. My birth where I like reclaimed my sovereignty, where I reclaimed my power, reclaimed my choices and just like it was a whole aspect of reclamation and healing. Yeah. Which brings me to my third third baby. And that was a wild, wild ride. Oh, and by the way, my birth with Damien happened almost to the T of what I visualized. Almost to the T of what I visualized. Isn't that crazy? Yeah. The only thing that was different was where my waters broke. My waters broke in the car. But when I was visualizing it, my waters broke, um, I think in the bathroom at my in-laws' house. But yeah, crazy. So amazing. So my third surprise baby, big time surprise. We did not plan him. You know what? Let me scratch that. We did not plan him on a human, like on like the aspect of like the human, but our souls and God planned it. Okay, God planned it, and I say that because I took Plan B. I took Plan B when I got pregnant, or no, sorry, I took Plan B to prevent pregnancy. And I wait, like, the month went by after I took Plan B and I still never got my bleed. So I was like, maybe I should just take a pregnancy test. Like, what are the chances that Plan B doesn't work? And hey, what are the chances? I took a pregnancy test and it was positive, and I told my husband, and he was like, what? How is that even possible? Like, how is that even possible? Yeah. Yeah. Plan B didn't work. So obviously that was not the plan B. Plan A was baby was meant to be here. He was meant to be here this whole time. And it's so funny because throughout that's like I would say 6 months prior, maybe even a year prior, I kept on seeing dragons, like pictures of dragons. I was like feeling into this like dragon energy, and I would see these like almost like flashes of lights in my room, like just like little tiny like sparks of light. And I knew that was dragon energy. And I was like, what is going on? Like, why? Like, what's up with this dragon energy? I was dreaming of dragons. Funny enough, Aiden was born the year of the dragon. So he was already even saying that gives me goosebumps. He was already connecting to me before I even got pregnant to almost like he was in my field and he was in my space, letting me know like, hey mom, I'm gonna come soon there. I'm gonna come soon. You don't know, but I'm gonna come. I always knew that I wanted a third baby, but I didn't wasn't expecting it to be so soon after Damien because I was still breastfeeding Damien. I was breastfeeding Damien up until I would say 8 months pregnant. I was 8 months pregnant and I was like, there's no way that I can tandem feed. Like, I do not want to do that. I do not. This is not what I want. So yeah, I went through my entire pregnancy as it like an intuitive wild pregnancy. I never took any ultrasound testing. I never did any blood work, no monitoring, absolutely nothing. Like nothing, nothing, nothing. Yeah, nothing. I hired a first First, let me say I wanted to test the waters with a midwife. I want to see if like, now COVID's done. Let's see like, maybe I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful. I believe in people and I believe that things can change, okay? I truly believe that. So I was like, you know what? Let me give them a second chance. Like maybe it is different this time. Silly me. So I called up the midwifery clinic and connected with a midwife. She said their home birth rates were very low. So I was like, of course they are. Of course they are. Why wouldn't they be? Why would they not be? So I had my first like phone consultation with her and I told her like everything. Like I said, I'm not doing an ultrasound. I'm not doing any blood work. I'm not doing any of these like routine testing, like none of that. Okay. I'm birthing at home. I don't want you to touch me. Like I was setting my boundaries. I was setting my boundaries because I knew what I wanted. And she asked me, "What happens if you get transferred to the hospital and you need what's it called? A blood transfusion." And I said, "I will only accept the blood transfusion if you have unvaccinated blood. I refuse to take vaccinated blood." She says, "Well, they don't monitor that. They don't, write it down. They don't keep track of whose blood is being given." I said, "Then I don't want it." She's like, "So you would you would risk death then take the blood transfusion?" I said, "Absolutely." And all you could hear is her click clacking in the background on her computer and like, you know, really like typing hard. And I knew in that moment I'm like, "No, I'm not going with a midwife. Fuck that. I'm not doing that. I already know. I'm not gonna do that now." So I went through my entire pregnancy just trusting my body, trusting my intuition, and alchemizing fears because I had a ton of fears come up. And I'm not going to go so deep into it because that's a whole podcast episode of like talking about fears around like, during pregnancy, about your body and about baby. And especially when you're having a wild pregnancy, like the fears and the egoic mind really kicks in, really comes in. So fears of like, what if there's something wrong with my baby? Maybe I should just go and check to see if baby's okay. Um, what if baby has some kind of health issues? What if there's some kind of genetic issue going on? What if baby's not even alive in there? Like maybe I should go and see if like there's a heartbeat. Um, what other fears were coming up? Fear of like me dying, fear of like him dying while I was giving birth. And that was a big one that I really had to like let myself feel and like move through, especially like the whole aspect of dying, because like you are taking 100% responsibility for your pregnancy and for your birth. Like it is all on you. You cannot point the finger and blame your OBGYN or the nurses or the midwife or anything or anyone else. Like you are taking the like 100% responsibility for every aspect of your journey. And that was one thing that I really had to sit with, especially with like the whole aspect of death. I had to really like let myself feel it, like feel like the sadness and the grief of like, will I be okay if like my baby dies when I'm giving birth? Like, will I be okay? Can I be okay with taking that responsibility and making, sticking with my choices? And I knew at the end of the day that the path that I was taking was the one that I was being called forward to. Because from the beginning of my pregnancy, I heard him say, I didn't know it was a he at the time. I was honestly so convinced I was pregnant with a girl. I heard him say, please don't let them touch me. Please don't let them touch me. And I knew from that moment when I heard that, I could not enter the system at all. He did not want to be touched by any medical equipment. He wanted nobody, in his space and in his field that was a part of this medical industrial system. So I already knew that this was being called forward to me, but I needed to continue to step into this path and continue to lean into the discomforts and my edges and my fears and really be present with them because they were coming up for me. So obviously these, when the fears come up for you, this is what wants to be released. It wants to be seen, it wants to be heard, it wants to be felt, and it wants to be loved. Okay. At the very end of it, it just wants, these fears and uncertainties, they just want unconditional love and to like have the space. So yeah, I knew it was already being called forward to me. So I was like very in tune with my body, with my womb, with like everything. And I was so drawn to nature and like being held by the earth and by the trees. And it was a very magical pregnancy. It was so beautiful. It was so delicious. And yeah, I was just like, I was so in love with being pregnant. Like, I love being pregnant. I love it. The first time around, like, if you asked me about like being pregnant, I would have told you, hell no, hell no. But remember, I was saying, don't take pictures of me. I don't want anybody to take a picture of me. But like my second pregnancy, my third pregnancy, like I took naked photo shoots. I took a sexy milk maternity photo shoot in a bath. It was like it was such a sexy experience, and I felt so sexy being pregnant. I don't know if any of that resonates with you, but it felt so juicy being pregnant. And 40 weeks came, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, is this baby ever gonna come?" And I always have to laugh because like no one's ever been pregnant forever, and I've seen that all over the place. Like your baby's eventually gonna come. No one's been pregnant for forever. So that was one thing that was like, but man, the mind really comes in and says like, are you like, when is baby gonna come? Like, how's it gonna happen? What's it gonna look like? What's it gonna feel like? Oh, and that was another fear is like the fear of the pain. Because it was so painful when I had Damien. It was an unmedicated free birth. So it was painful. So I was afraid. I was truly afraid of the pain and not being able to handle it. Um, there was another point that I wanted to mention, but I have baby brain, so I can't remember it right now. But um, yeah, so 40 weeks came and I was so in my mind of like, when is it gonna happen? How is it gonna happen? And just like this constant like, when is it going to happen? But the month prior, like the last like month of my pregnancy, like I started to receive some really like insane downloads from God and like just so much wisdom was pouring through. Like I was just writing and writing and writing because you're in between the veil. You're like, half here on earth and like half in like the spiritual realm, like playing around, waiting for baby to come. So I was receiving so much wisdom and like how to breathe, the sounds to make, um, connecting with the elements and using the elements for for my birth and like how to use the elements to birth my baby. So it was a very profound experience that whole entire pregnancy. And yeah, 40 weeks came, uh, 40 weeks and like a few days started, like, where it was like, the days were coming. I don't know what I was trying to say. Um, but the day before I went into labor, I remember going into the forest because I was constantly connecting with the same tree, letting her hold me, letting her receive me. I went to go and connect with the tree and lean on it and ask for her to hold me and like energetically hold me as I was giving birth. And I posted it on social media. I had a friend message me and say something along the lines of like, your ancestors or your spiritual team is like preparing you and getting ready for you to like basically birth your baby. And when I read that, I was like, oh, I have goosebumps. Like, this, it's coming soon. It's coming soon. That night, I think I went to bed that night, and I'm pretty sure it was that night. Yeah, it was that night. I was laying in bed. Oh no, I said something to my husband as I was walking, and I got into the bed and I said something, and a little water leaked out of me. I was like, babe, I think like some of my water started to leak. And I wasn't entirely sure. I thought maybe like, I said something too loud and or like too like forcefully and like peed myself a little bit. But then that night happened and I kept on getting woken up from contractions. And I was like, "Oh, are these like quote unquote Braxton Hicks contractions, like practice labor that's happening? Like, is that what's going on?" And then the next day happened and the contractions started happening a little bit more. Sometimes they were like um really intense, and then other times they were like, eh, not like nothing. The day went by and I was like, I would love to go for a walk. Like, let's go for a walk and get this, get these contractions moving and going. So it was like maybe around 4 o'clock, and I was like, let's get dressed. Like, let's go to the reptile shop. We can go inside. It was raining that day. So we couldn't really go for a walk outside. So we were getting dressed, and my youngest son at the time, Damien, said something to me, and like he said something, I can't remember exactly what he said. He said something about like something with like fuck or fucker. And he said it to my husband, and I like bursted out laughing because it was so funny. Like, I laughed so hard. And in that moment of laughing so hard, my water broke. My water broke all over the floor. And I was like, okay, sorry guys. I can't come I can't come with you guys on your adventure. I'm gonna have to stay here because my water just broke. So my husband took the kids. And like through my entire pregnancy, I really enjoyed the bath. Like, I love baths. Like, I make them super sexy and sensual with like candles, and I bring my crystals, and I bring my spider plants, and I sage it, or I use Palo Santo, and clean and cleanse the energy, and I get in there with Epsom salt. And that morning when I was feeling those contractions, I was in the bath like at least like 6 or 7 times, just like laying in there and like just relaxing and letting the contractions happen in the bath. So they left. I got into the bath to just like, relax a little bit because the contractions were starting to get a little bit more intense. And when I was sitting on the couch after everyone came back, I was sitting on the couch and I was like really focusing on my breathing and like not getting tied into the discomfort of the contractions. And I was really focusing on my breathing, and that's what I heard through like receiving um like downloads and wisdom from God was like really focus on your breath, and your breath is the element of air, right? So I really weaved in that element of air of like focusing on my breath and using my breath as a tool to um like stay present and not get connected to the discomfort and the pain. Fast forward a couple hours, it was around 5 o'clock, I think, maybe 6 o'clock. And the contraction started getting super intense, like super, super, super intense. Like I would have to go off into another room and like just move and breathe and wait for the contraction to like pass. But it kind of threw me off because throughout the day, the contractions weren't very consistent. Sometimes they were super intense. Sometimes they were just like a cramp. So I was like so completely blown off. So by 6 o'clock, like I was in labor. Like I was getting ready to shift into transitional labor. And the discomfort started getting more intense and more intense. So we started to set up my bed to put all like, the plastic down, the black sheets that I was just gonna toss out anyway. And yeah, so I was on my knees on the floor on my yoga mat and just like using my couch as a thing to like just hold on to and like just lean on while I was, feeling these contractions. I remember talking to my sister-in-law on the phone and she's like talking to me and telling me the story. And I think my brother-in-law was telling me a story and I was like, I couldn't really like talk to them because the contractions started coming in. I was like, guys, I gotta go. Like I'm I'm in labor, so I gotta go. I gotta I gotta go. I'm so sorry I cannot talk to you, but these contractions are really kicking my ass right now, so I just need to be in my own space. So my husband, thank God, he put a movie on for the boys to watch in the living room, and he stayed in the room with me. And I labored on the floor for maybe half an hour. And he's like, "Come on, babe, like let's get up to the bed and, come get comfortable on the bed." So I said, "Okay," and I got up and like as soon as I got on that bed, like transitional labor started to come quick. And it started getting more painful. It started to get more painful and I could see myself dropping back into my body and identifying with the pain and thinking, "Oh my God, this hurts so much. Like, this is so painful." And I would catch myself and bring myself back to my breath, to bring myself back to the moment and be present and be with the pain, but not be attached to the pain. That was a big key for me is like, be with the pain, but don't be attached to it. Because as soon as you attach to it and identify with it, you get lost in it. And there was no way I was getting lost in it because I knew that that would have been a game over for me. I knew that that would have been like, we got to go get some pain stuff for pain. Like, we got to leave. So I would catch myself dropping back into my body and being like, oh, this hurts so much. It hurts so much. And then in an instant, I'd be like, come back to your breath, come back to your breath, come back to the air, come back to your breath. And I had to set my phone up because I wanted to record my birth. I wanted to record my birth so I could share it, so I could post it on social media. I wanted to, have a video of me giving birth. So I set it up behind me and the active labor was so, so, so intense. And my husband was there with me the entire time. Oh my God, I love him so much for it. I love him so much. Like he was like exactly where he needed to be, where I wanted him to be. It was just so perfect. And I told him prior to this, I'm like, babe, if I start to say I can't do this anymore, I can't do this anymore, just know that I am getting so close and just to like encourage me to keep going because, when you start to say I can't do this, you're literally right there. Like you're right there. So I got to the point where I'm like, I can't do this anymore, babe. I can't do this. It hurts too much. I can't do this. And I had to dig so deep into my like the energetics of my womb. Like I had to dig so deep into the energetics of my womb and call in the energy of my womb. And let that be my guiding force to birth my baby. So during the video, like you can hear the switch in the sounds because I really wanted to focus on like using my own voice as a tool to ground me, but also use my own voice to like soothe me and birth my baby. Yeah, so I like in the video you can hear the switch when I like jumped into my womb and used that energy and used like the sound of my womb to birth my son. You can hear this like the change in the way I was birthing and like the sounds that were coming out of me. Like it was more of like a deep, like primal sound that came out of my womb. So within like, two of those like breathing and like pushing, he came. He came so quick. And I would say like from transitional labor to active labor, like it was like a good 7 minutes. Like that was it. That was it. Like that was it. I got it all on camera. It was so amazing. It was so amazing. And yeah, it's so funny because I was so connected to water during my entire pregnancy, connected to the bath, connected to water, using water as like um a tool to speak into, to drink. Um it's funny because when Aiden came out, it was so much water that came out, like so much water, like I could feel like a pool of water coming out of my vagina, which was pretty interesting. Um, but yeah, he came and my husband's like, "There's a penis," and I was like, "Okay, cool. I'm destined to be a boy mom, and that's totally cool with me. I'm cool with that." Yeah, so Aiden came, we did a Lotus birth. So for those of you who don't know about Lotus birth, this is when you keep the placenta and the umbilical cord attached the entire time until the um placenta and sorry, until the baby decides when they want to detach from the placenta and fully be present in the like on the earth. So I knew that was calling me forward as well too. Um to have that connection and let him choose when he wanted to release from the placenta and from the womb to being on the earth. And it was such a perfect experience. My husband was completely against it. He thought I was so freaking crazy. I'll share another podcast episode about the Lotus birth, but he thought I was crazy when I told him I wanted to do when I wanted to do the Lotus birth. Like he thought I lost my mind, but I'm like, listen, dude, I know that you know on a soul level that this is what is being called forward of us. And I'm going to do this because I am not speaking from a place of fear. I'm speaking from a place of empowerment and truth. And whether you want to acknowledge that this is the path that's being called forward of us, I'm still going to do it, like whether you acknowledge it or not. But after we did the Lotus birth, and he took such beautiful care of the placenta, like he handled it so gently and just like, you know, washed it, dried it, changed the like added the herbs to it, added the salt, changed the towels. Like he was so amazing with it. Like so amazing. But after my son, detached from the placenta and the umbilical cord, my husband's like, that was a pretty cool experience, Marissa. Like, that was a pretty cool experience of like the placenta and like him like disconnecting from it on his own. He's like, it was a very cool experience. And I'm like, I told you, babe. I told you. I told you. But yeah, um, it was a great experience. It was exactly how I wanted it to be. And that was my redemption birth. Like, I didn't have any bright lights around me. I didn't have anybody poking me or prodding me or putting their fingers inside of me. I didn't have anybody monitoring my baby's heart rate. I didn't have my grandmother flicking the lights on like she did when I was birthing Damien and turning these big bright lights on. And it was just exactly how I wanted it to be. It was perfect. It was beautiful. It was my redemption birth. It was like absolutely my redemption birth. And I'm going to um, talk more about the Lotus birth in another podcast episode. And yeah, my relationship with my husband just grew so much more, like, deeper and beautiful, and he kept on telling me, like, after I gave birth, like, how sexy I was, and I was like, "You literally just watched me shit myself, and you think I'm still sexy? Like, I love you so much. Like, you are the best human in this world. Like, I love you." But yeah, our relationship just got so much more juicier and more delicious. Okay, that's proper English. More delicious. And like was and still am so much more attracted to him. Like right after I gave birth and he was just like there being in his like sexy masculine energy and holding that like field of protection, I was so freaking attracted to him. I'm like, can we do this again? Can we do this again? This was a great experience. Like, let's do this again. Yeah, so it was a great experience. And it was funny because my entire postpartum really reflected a lot of like my first postpartum and like the jaundice. Like, I don't think I mentioned Liam having jaundice in my previous podcast or previous like part one, but Liam having jaundice and like needing to go back to the hospital and then him being under this blue light. Um, yeah, all of like the things that happened in my postpartum with Liam started to come up with my postpartum with Aiden. So the breastfeeding stuff, not pooping, um, the jaundice, and all of that was coming up. And I knew that it was coming up for for the purpose of it needing to be healed and like taking a different route, basically. So with Liam, we brought him back to the hospital and he went under the blue light to like reduce his bilirubin levels. And, I gave up breastfeeding with Liam. And with Aiden, he was getting jaundicey. Like he was starting to get not pretty yellow, but he was getting a little bit yellow. And I started to panic a little bit. I needed to do some healing. And I called one of my good friends and she did like a mini quantum healing hypnosis session, like literally like it's such a quick little session of like bringing me back into the hospital room with Liam and being in that room when he was under the blue light filter, and like we just did like a quick little like thing we moved through. I cried, I released, and like I became focused on like what I needed to do to help Aiden. And the breastfeeding thing started coming up. I was worried I wasn't making enough milk because he wasn't pooping. Um, but I knew that this was what wanted to be healed from Liam's experience, and that was still like that that circle wasn't closed yet, and I needed to close that circle through this experience. So a lot of things that needed to be healed and needed to be released and needed to be closed happened in Aiden's birth, which was amazing. Yeah. So that was it. That was my from my birth trauma to um my redemption birth. Yeah. What a great experience. I tell my husband I would love to have more babies. He's done, but I know there's one more. Anyways, that is it. My baby is crying, looking for me, and see you in the next episode.